The alarm siren screamed through the subterranean command bunker, a sound so sharp and guttural it felt like the walls themselves were shuddering. Red lights pulsed across steel panels as data streams poured over holographic displays. Humanity's last safe haven beneath the scorched ruins of Europe trembled under the weight of a message no one wanted to read. Asterisk, they tried to tell the truth about Earth. Nobody listened. Asterisk. That was the header flashing on every incoming transmission. Fragmented warnings, encrypted codes, and desperate pleas, the kind of signals the Galactic Council had long dismissed as human paranoia. But now the frequencies were laced with proof. Alien fleets had shifted formation and were headed directly toward Earth. Colonel Elias Kaelen leaned against the operations table, knuckles pressed white against the cold surface. His eyes, scarred from radiation burns, reflected the red light like twin coals. 45 years old, forged in endless wars, Kaelen carried himself like a man who had outlived too many victories. "They're coming," he muttered, voice low but heavy enough to silence the chatter. Lieutenant Mara Vey, sharp-minded, 29, leaned in beside him. "Council ignored the data when we first flagged it. Said Earth was fearmongering. And now the proof is here." Kalen's lips curled in a humorless smile. "We gave them truth. They called it noise." The hologram shifted, revealing the enemy formation, the Myrick Dominion. Biomechanical leviathans, ships that pulsed as though alive, their outer shells writhing with veins of molten light. They moved not in straight lines but in coordinated surges, like predators closing in on wounded prey. "They'll be in orbit within 72 hours, Mara said, eyes narrowing. The room fell silent. The weight of those words pressed down like gravity doubled. Humanity had been an underdog species for centuries, crawling out from the ashes of Earth's near annihilation during the resource wars. They had survived starvation, collapse, and 100 years of exile in orbital colonies. And yet, every time humanity clawed its way back, the galaxy treated them as reckless upstarts, too volatile, too emotional, too dangerous to be trusted. Kalen's gaze swept the room. Officers, engineers, strategists, faces carved with exhaustion and desperation. 72 hours, he said, voice sharp as steel. That's not a countdown to invasion. That's a deadline. By the time those bastards cross the line, Earth must not look like prey. A murmur rippled through the staff. Mara tilted her head, catching the dangerous edge in his tone. "What are you proposing?" Kaelen straightened, shoulders broad, presence unyielding. "We fight first. The first shot won't come from them. It'll come from us." The room stiffened. This was the kind of decision that could damn humanity forever, an unprovoked strike, defiance against a galactic empire 10 times their size. But hesitation was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. On the far side of the room, Chief Strategist Halden shook his head. "Colonel, with respect, if we move first, the Council will brand us aggressors. They'll side with the Myrick. Humanity will stand alone." Kalen's jaw tightened. "We already stand alone. They branded us dangerous long before today. Every alliance we begged for, every warning we sent, they laughed. So let them laugh. When history writes this moment, it won't say we cowered. It'll say we struck back." The words hit like a war drum. Mara felt the current shift. Officers who moments before had been paralyzed with dread now looked at him with fire in their eyes. Still, one voice cut through the rising momentum, Dr. Aaron Callis, intelligence officer, the only civilian in the bunker. She adjusted her cracked glasses, her tone measured, careful. "Colonel, strategy is one thing. Survival is another. You launch an early strike, yes, you catch them off guard. But if we miscalculate, humanity is finished before the war even starts." Kaelen turned his gaze to her, eyes narrowing. "Then we don't miscalculate. Logic doesn't bend to willpower," Callis replied. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a growl. "No. But war does." The tension was palpable, the bunker a crucible where decisions would burn into history. Mara broke the silence. "We need leverage. Something the Myrick don't expect. A weapon, a strategy, hell, even a bluff. If we go in blind, we'll be ash and memory. Kaelen nodded slowly. The black archives. The room shifted again, murmurs, nervous glances. The archives were forbidden, sealed records from Earth's darkest experiments during the early wars with alien species. Secrets buried not just for their danger, but for the shame they carried. You'd risk unleashing what our own ancestors swore never to touch again? Halden asked, aghast. Kaelen's expression was grim. Our ancestors didn't face extinction at the hands of the Myrick. If truth wasn't enough to save us, then lies and ghosts will have to do. The alarms cut deeper, a new warning flashing across the displays. Surveillance drones near Saturn's orbit had been annihilated. No signals, no wreckage, just silence. The Myrick were closer than anticipated. Mara clenched her fists. They're accelerating. Then so do we, Kaelen snapped. Prepare the strike fleet. Access the archives. If humanity is to die, we'll make the galaxy remember the taste of our defiance. The order rippled across the command. Crews scrambled, data lines flared alive, codes began unlocking forbidden files. Kaelen turned to Mara. You're with me. If I fall, you carry the command. If Earth burns, you carry the memory. She met his gaze, eyes burning with the same stubborn fire. I won't let it end like this. Good, he said. His voice was quieter now, but every word carried the weight of iron. Because the galaxy thinks humanity's truth is noise. Let's remind them what thunder sounds like. And then the first cryptic report came through, buried within the archives. Schematics of a weapon, not fully understood even by those who built it. A weapon that pulsed not with energy but with something far more dangerous, resonance keyed to human neural patterns. A weapon designed not just to fight, but to terrify. The bunker's hum dropped to silence as the data unfolded. Humanity's last truth had been ignored. Now, it would speak in fire. Cliffhanger ending. As the hologram of the weapon lit the room in ghostly blue, the bunker shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Mara staggered, catching herself against the console. What was that? A young officer's voice cracked as he shouted from the comms station. Sir, signal breach! They found us! Myrick probes inside the bunker perimeter! The walls trembled again, and this time the sound was unmistakable. Metal tearing, stone collapsing, the roar of enemies descending. Kaelen's voice cut through the chaos, thunderous and unyielding. Then it begins here. Hold your ground! The truth had been ignored. Now, humanity would carve its answer in blood. The bunker walls screamed with the impact of plasma charges. The floor trembled, panels cracked, and sparks spat from fractured conduits. Humanity's last hidden command hub was no longer hidden, it was under siege. Colonel Elias Kaelen barked orders through the chaos, voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Lock down sectors 3 through 7! Seal breach corridors! Lieutenant Marave had already drawn her sidearm, her other hand pulling up the holographic map of their position. Crimson dots spread like infection through the bunker's lower levels. The Myrick probes weren't just machines, they were hunters, organic steel predators with hive-born precision. They're inside the ventilation shafts, Mara shouted. If they spread to the command core, we lose control in under 10 minutes. Kaelen slammed a fist against the table. Then we don't give them 10 minutes. The first probe tore through the ceiling, a creature of serrated limbs and molten eyes. Its shriek was both mechanical and alive, echoing with a resonance that chilled bone. An engineer froze in panic, wide-eyed, until Kaelen's pistol flared. One shot split the probe's skull in a burst of sickly green fluid. Eyes forward! Kaelen roared. They bleed. That means they can die. Mara gritted her teeth, firing into the next probe as it clawed free from the wall. The room became a storm of gunfire, screams, and shrapnel. Officers who had never held rifles were suddenly soldiers, blasting into the swarm that spilled from ducts and walls. The Myrick probes adapted fast. For every one destroyed, 2 more surged forward. Their bodies shifted, skin hardening against bullets, limbs evolving into new shapes mid-combat. Humanity was fighting against enemies that learned with every kill. Dr. Erin Callis ducked under a console, clutching a data core as though it were her lifeline. "Colonel! If they reach the archive feeds, they'll know what we're planning. We can't let them access it." Kaelen shot another probe point blank, then yanked the rifle from a fallen soldier and hurled it toward her. "Then you'll hold that core like your life depends on it, because it does." The firefight raged. Halden, the strategist, was pinned against a bulkhead, his face streaked with soot. He shouted above the gunfire, desperation breaking through his usual cold demeanor. "This bunker won't hold. Even if we kill every probe in here, their main force will flatten this entire sector." Kaelen reloaded, calm in the storm. "Then we take the fight out of here." "What are you saying?" Halden demanded. "I'm saying we don't just defend," Kaelen growled. "We strike." Mara glanced at him, catching the weight behind the words. "The archive's weapon." Kaelen nodded once. "If there's ever a time, it's now. We bleed ourselves dry in this hole, or we unleash hell on them before they're ready." Dr. Callis's face paled. "You don't even know what that weapon will do. It was abandoned for a reason. Everything we've ever built was abandoned once," Kaelen said coldly. "But we're still here. That's proof enough." A sudden explosion ripped through the command doors. A dozen probes surged through the breach, shrieking. The staff fired wildly, some screaming, others standing their ground. Mara shot 2 through their thoraxes, pivoted, and kicked another off her. But the numbers were endless. Kaelen slammed his comms. "Omega Protocol. Evac routes 2 and 4. All surviving crew, fall back." The order sent ripples of movement, soldiers grabbing wounded, engineers hauling what data they could. The bunker was being abandoned, humanity's last refuge turned into a kill zone. Mara ran beside Kaelen as they pushed through collapsing corridors. Behind them, charges detonated sealing paths, burying probes and rubble. Still more pursued. The Myrick weren't just attacking, they were dissecting humanity's defenses, probing for weakness. As they turned into the hangar bay, the full horror became clear. Dozens of probes crawled across the walls and ceilings, tearing at bulkheads like carrion birds. Human fighters waited in their berths, but the swarm had already reached them. Pilots were dragged screaming from cockpits, blood spraying across metal floors. Kaelen didn't flinch. He raised his rifle, firing as he charged forward. "Get us in the air! Now!" Mara vaulted over a fallen crate, shooting through the swarm. Her voice cut across the chaos. "If we get airborne, where do we go? Earth's surface is a graveyard. We won't last in orbit." Kaelen's answer was grim but steady. "We go to Titan. That's where the archive's weapon is buried." Dr. Callis staggered behind them, clutching the core. "You're gambling everything on a rumor." Kaelen turned on her mid-stride, eyes blazing. "No. I'm gambling on humanity. And that's the only bet I've ever known how to win." The hangar thundered alive. One heavy-class dropship roared, engines kicking dust and blood across the floor. Mara and Kaelen dragged survivors aboard while gunners opened fire from the bay doors, mowing down probes with heavy plasma bursts. The dropship lifted, shaking under the strain, but tore free from the hangar before it collapsed entirely in a shower of steel. Inside, the survivors slumped into seats, faces pale and hollow. Every pair of eyes turned to Kaelen. Halden finally broke the silence. "Colonel, we've abandoned Earth's last command center. If Titan fails..." Kaelen cut him off, voice sharp as a blade. "Titan won't fail. Humanity won't fail. The galaxy thinks we're broken. Let's show them what broken glass does to flesh." The dropship ripped into the sky, leaving the smoldering ruin of the bunker behind. Through the viewport, Earth stretched out, a wounded planet, scarred from centuries of war and neglect. The once blue oceans were now sickly green, clouded by toxins. The continents were fractured wastelands. Yet it was still home, and the thought of losing it entirely carved deep into every survivor's chest. Mara leaned against the viewport, whispering more to herself than anyone else. "If the Myrick win, this isn't just the end of Earth. It's the end of us everywhere." Kaelen heard, but his gaze stayed forward. Then we make Titan our beginning. Hours passed in tense silence as the dropship burned across the void. Crews patched wounds, whispered prayers, or sat in haunted quiet. Kaelen stood at the front, studying the flickering hologram of the Archive's weapon. It was less a weapon than a concept, a terrifying convergence of biology and resonance. Human neural signals amplified through harmonic waves, designed to paralyze any organism unprepared for the frequency. It was the culmination of Earth's darkest era, when scientists had turned desperation into invention without regard for ethics. Mara approached, her voice low. If this thing works, it could turn the tide. But if it doesn't... Kaelen finally looked at her, his face carved in iron. Then we fall like warriors, not prey. The comms crackled suddenly. An operator shouted from the console. Contact! Multiple Mirror cruisers inbound. They've tracked us. The viewport lit with fire. Biomechanical ships unfurled in the darkness, their surfaces pulsing like muscle under skin. Weapons glowed with molten light. Halden cursed. We can't outfly them. Dropship's too slow. Kaelen didn't hesitate. Then we don't run. Strap in and arm every turret. If they want us dead, they'll choke on our bones first. The ship shook as the first volley hit, alarms wailing. Mara strapped in beside Kaelen, weapons primed. The crew roared to life, firing turrets in a storm of plasma that lit the void. The Myrick answered with shrieks that carried even through the comms, a sound that scraped nerves raw. Callus clutched the core tighter, whispering words half prayer, half curse. Kaelen rose, bracing himself against the shaking deck. His voice thundered across the dropship. They ignored our truth. They mocked our warnings. Let this be the moment they realize, humanity doesn't beg. Humanity bites. The crew roared back, voices blending with gunfire. And as the battle lit the void, Titan loomed ahead, dark, silent, waiting to decide whether humanity's gamble would end in salvation or extinction. The dropship tore through Titan's thin atmosphere, its hull scorched and battered from the Myrick ambush. Smoke trailed behind it, systems failing one by one, alarms shrieking in overlapping tones. The survivors clung to their harnesses, every jolt threatening to throw them into the void. Colonel Elias Kaelen stood braced against the cockpit frame, face set like carved iron. He didn't look at the damage readouts, didn't flinch at the fire trailing off their wings. His focus was locked ahead, on the blackened surface of Titan and the faint outline of structures half buried in methane frost, the ruins of the Black Archives. Mara's voice cut sharp over the chaos. Landing thrusters are gone. If we don't angle this right, we'll smear ourselves across the ice. Kaelen gripped her shoulder. Then angle it right. We're not dying in the air. The dropship slammed into Titan's surface in a controlled crash, skidding across frozen plains before embedding into a ridge of jagged rock. Metals screamed, sparks rained, and then silence fell, heavy, suffocating, broken only by the survivors coughing through smoke. They were alive. Barely. The hatch blew open with a hiss. Frigid winds howled through, carrying flecks of frost that clung to skin like needles. The survivors stumbled out, weapons in hand, breaths crystallizing in the bitter cold. Before them loomed the Archives, a fortress of obsidian towers, their edges jagged like broken glass, pulsing faintly with a ghostly blue glow. Even buried under centuries of ice, the place radiated menace. Dr. Erin Callis staggered forward, clutching the data core like a relic. Her voice shook. This is it. The weapons resting chamber is beneath that structure. But we need access codes. Without them... Kaelen cut her off, marching forward through the snow. Then we break the locks. The team pushed inside. The corridors were lined with dead consoles and alien-looking machinery that hummed faintly, as if waiting to wake. Frost coated every surface, crunching under boots. The deeper they moved, the more oppressive the air became, charged, vibrating with something unseen. Mara whispered, "Feels like the walls are watching us." Callis didn't disagree. "They probably are." Halfway down the main hall, the first Myrick strike hit. The fortress shook as plasma fire ripped into its outer layers. The Dominion had followed, and their ships were descending. Kaelen's voice thundered. "We're out of time! Secure the chamber, now!" The survivors sprinted, shadows of pursuit already flickering across the walls. They reached the heart of the archives, a cavernous chamber dominated by a suspended core of crystalline machinery, humming with a rhythm that felt disturbingly alive. It pulsed with faint waves that rattled bone. Callis dropped to her knees before the console, fingers flying across ancient keys. "This is it. The resonance engine. It amplifies human neural signals and broadcasts them on frequencies alien minds can't shield against. It's not a weapon in the way we understand. It's terror incarnate." Halden spat. "And what if it tears our minds apart too?" Kaelen's voice was iron. "Then we go down screaming. But if it works, we buy humanity a future." The chamber shook again, this time from inside. Myriad probes burst through the walls, shrieking, claws slashing. The survivors opened fire, the chamber instantly consumed in chaos. Plasma bolts ricocheted off crystal, screams mixed with gunfire, blood splattered across frost. Mara fought like a storm, blades flashing as she cut through a probe at close range. "Callis, how long?" "Minutes!" Callis shouted, terror in her voice. "Maybe less if you keep them off me." "Then work faster!" Mara barked, plunging her blade through another probe's throat. Kaelen fired until his rifle clicked empty, then swung it like a club, smashing a probe into shards. His voice roared above the battle. "Hold them! Every second we live is another nail in their coffin!" The fight was brutal, relentless. One by one, soldiers fell, dragged into the swarm. Halden took a strike to the chest, collapsing as Mara screamed his name. He coughed blood, clutching her wrist. "Win or none of this matters." His eyes went still before she could answer. Mara's rage became fire, every movement precise and merciless. Finally, the resonance engine roared alive. The chamber bathed in blinding blue light, walls trembling as a deep hum vibrated through the air. Callis screamed over the noise. "It's linked! Kaelen, you have to be the one! It needs a human neural imprint strong enough to anchor the broadcast." Kaelen didn't hesitate. He shoved past her, placing both hands on the crystalline console. The machine latched onto him, cables piercing his arms, electricity ripping through his nerves. Mara shouted, "You'll burn yourself alive!" Kaelen grimaced, teeth bared, voice strained but unyielding. "Then let me burn bright enough they never forget." The engine pulsed, feeding on his mind, amplifying every thought into a tidal wave. Across Titan, across the system, frequencies exploded outward. The Myrick shrieked. Their probes convulsed, limbs thrashing as their organic components spasmed. Outside, their massive ships faltered, formations breaking as alien minds drowned in the resonance. Kaelen's voice thundered through the engine, not in words but in raw defiance, a projection of human will, rage, and survival. "You called us dangerous. You called us unstable. You should have listened. This is humanity's truth, we do not kneel." The resonance became unbearable. Probes collapsed in heaps of twitching metal and flesh. Myrick ships turned on each other, crews tearing themselves apart in madness. The entire invasion fleet fractured, undone not by firepower, but by the weaponized echo of human defiance. Inside the chamber, Kaelen's body convulsed. Blood streamed from his nose and ears, his skin blistering under the overload. Mara tried to reach him, but the resonance field hurled her back. "Elias!" she screamed, desperation cracking her voice. He turned his head slightly, eyes blazing through the pain. "You carry the memory, remember?" And then the resonance peaked. A shockwave tore outward, annihilating every Myrick presence on Titan and scattering the fleet in orbit. Silence followed, a silence so profound it felt like the galaxy itself had paused. The engine dimmed. Kaelen's body slumped, still tethered to the console. Mara rushed forward, tearing the cables free, cradling him as his chest barely rose. His eyes flickered open for a final moment. "Tell them," Earth spoke. Then he was gone. The survivors stood in the wreckage, the weight of what had happened pressing down on them. The Myrick had been broken, not destroyed, but shattered enough to halt their advance. Humanity had bought time, carved space in history with blood and fire. Mara rose, Kaelen's body still in her arms, her face streaked with ash and tears. She looked to the others, voice steady, carrying the same unyielding fire he had carried. We've been dismissed. Mocked. Ignored? No longer. Today the galaxy learns the truth. Humanity doesn't fade into silence. We rise. The survivors bowed their heads, some weeping, others gripping their weapons with renewed resolve. Outside, Titan's sky glowed with the wreckage of shattered alien ships, a grim testament to the cost of defiance. For the first time in centuries, Earth's voice had been heard. Not as a plea. Not as noise. But as thunder that shook the stars.